Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's live discussion on Star Trek Lower Decks. I'm here joined by special guests as we're going to jump into the newest Star Trek show and say what we think about it. So first, let me introduce guests. Joining me as always, my sister Alyssa. Alyssa, thanks so much for joining.
No problem. Sorry, there was a lag. I had to hit pause on the YouTube channel because they're a few seconds behind, and it just kicked in when you were introducing me. And good. It's looking forward to being back and talking about some Lower Decks with you guys.
Awesome. And also joining us, quite a regular on the channel, Don. I guess we're pointing down. Don, thanks for joining.
Live long and prosper, Trekkies. Glad to be discussing Lower Decks Season 1. This is going to be exciting.
All right, so first I want to get into our overall thoughts. What did we think of the show? What did we think of the season? Since I'm really curious because I'm not entirely sure, I'm going to start with you, Don. What were your thoughts on Lower Decks, the show, and Season 1? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What are your overall thoughts on it?
Well, I will say this is the Trek I've been waiting for since Voyager ended. Out of the
no love for Enterprise.
Look, out of the newer iterations of what people sometimes refer to as Kurtzman Trek, this to me is by far, I think, the most true to traditional Star Trek. And not just because it's more episodic, but I think the character interactions, the storytelling devices, to me, this is a lot more in line with the Trek that I'm used to and what I actually prefer. It's different, obviously, because it is a comedy. But I'm able to see through the comedy in order to get to the heart of the overall overarching narrative that they've put together, and I really like what they've done so far.
Cool. And now you, Alyssa, what did you think of the Lower Decks?
I think I have a higher opinion of the other Trek series than Don does, but I like this a lot too, and I see what he's saying as far as it being closer to the Star Trek you're used to. I mentioned this to you in an email, Mark, or maybe on one of the comments. I think I did it on a comment on one of your videos that this is essentially like fan fiction that became canon because it was written by a fanboy, Mike McMahon, who's the showrunner of this show. And when you listen to the interviews or watch the Ready Room shows, like you could tell he's a fanboy, and that comes through with all the what the casual viewer would say is obscure references, and those of us who are Trekkies, like we get all of them. Like especially that last episode, it was just like full of them. I loved that they went to Return of the Archons at the beginning of the episode. I know we're going to get more into specific episodes later, but just as an example, I love the references that they brought in. Sometimes they were a little unbelievable. Like, would Bulmer really know about the Space Coast? Probably not, but but it was still funny. It was still good, and overall, like I really enjoyed this show. I think it's apples and oranges to me to compare it to Picard or Discovery because it's just a different kind of show, but I love it for what it was. And to me, it got better as the season went on, which I'm sure we'll get into later. I like the ending of the season particularly well. But yeah, overall, I have a pretty high opinion of the first season.
So Cardinal Doomsday in the chat said, "Did you get the Zahn reference, AJ?" What Zahn reference? Was there a Zahn reference? I don't know. Okay, I think by Zahn, are you referring to like there's a Vulcan character who was supposed to be in Star Trek Phase 2 to replace Spock because Leonard Nimoy didn't want to do? Is that the Zahn you're talking about? If there was a reference, I totally missed it. But anyway, wait for Cardinal Doomsday.
Yeah, well, since he was asking me, I would say I didn't get the reference either.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So interesting. Anyway, I kind of agree with Don. I think this is the better of the Kurtzman shows, or the modern Trek, as I would like to call it. Although I think I may be a little bit higher on Discovery and Picard and Don is, but maybe not as high as Alyssa. So I'm kind of in between. But I think, yeah, because, and you're absolutely right, Alyssa, of what you were saying about this being like a love letter to Star Trek, or basically a fanboying out. And I think part of the reason why I like it better, or the best, is because I do get the feeling, and I talked about this in my own review, that there was less studio interference. That it was more of like they went to Picard and Discovery to be like, this is what we're gonna draw viewers into CBS, so we have to make it action packed, we have to have great special effects. And with Lower Decks, like, you know, this guy came and pitched the show and was like, all right, well, we need more Star Trek more Star Trek shows to keep the fans subscribed and not unsubscribed in between, like our big things like Discovery and Picard. So let's go ahead and greenlight this. So I don't think they were as big on interfering with it, and sort of just let him do whatever the hell he wanted to do. And I think that's typically the less studio interference, the better. And this is all, of course, speculation. I have no evidence for that. That's just my guess based off of what I see, particularly with Picard. Like, I got the strong impression that there was a lot of studio, oh, we have to have this big action-packed finale, whereas with Lower Decks, even though they did have kind of an action-packed finale, I never got that impression. I more of got the impression that they were sort of free to do what they want to do. Now, the thing with Lower Decks is it is the first Star Trek comedy that's canon, and I actually think it's a really tight line rope to walk to be a comedy making fun of Star Trek, but to actually be Star Trek at the same time. And I think for the most part, they do a really great job at it. There's maybe a few times I think they get a bit too silly for my taste, but for the most part, I'm definitely willing to give it a lot more leeway being a comedy, such as like Q showing up and knowing Mariner and wanting to hang out with her. Like, that would not make sense normally, but it's a comedy, so I go with it. And plus, that was fucking hilarious. So, so for the most part, like, I do agree that the season got better as it went. That it had a bit of a rough start, and it took them a while to get to their footing. But once they got into it, like that last run of like 3 episodes, they were just sort of, I think they really hit their stride. Yeah, so let's see. I think they answered my question about Zahn. So there was the Zahn I was referring to, and Zahn reference was in Crisis Point. Okay, it was in Crisis Point, but what was the reference? But anyway, cool. So let's go on to some other topics. So all right, so we talked a bit about what we liked about the season, but let's get more into specifics. Like, what specific aspects of the show, not maybe specific episodes or characters, because we'll get to that later on, but what sort of specific aspects of the show do we think really worked? For me, I would say probably the as I was talking about, the combination of character story, drama, being a Star Trek show, feeling like a Star Trek show, and being funny and telling good jokes at the same time. I think they really nailed that. I don't know if you guys want to chime in. Don, if you have any thoughts of what you really liked about the season.
I really like the character interactions. You know, for me, one of the things that always kind of drove Star Trek was the camaraderie between characters, and I think they did a great job of showing, the lower decks crew as being, a tight knit group of people. And even when they showed the more senior bridge officers, it's like, hey, they have a great back and forth rapport with each other. They're able to bounce off of each other pretty well. And yeah, even though some of the stuff is absolutely ridiculous, it reminds me of hanging out with some of my friends, the different personalities that everyone has. Um, Sometimes you get into arguments about stuff, but at the end of the day, you put that aside, and you go and you have drinks in the bar. So that was probably my favorite thing about the show so far, is just the the way that they have the characters interact with each other.
So you would say it felt more relatable.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. And and I also want to jump in. Cardinal Doomsday answer the question about Zahn, specifically Beckett Mariner compared Bulmer to Zahn when he refused to participate in her movie Holodeck, and said but Bulmer was unfamiliar with the name. Oh, I totally missed that. See, that's the thing about this show. Like, there's a ridiculous amount of references that they boom, that they just jam pack in it, and sometimes they fly by like so fast, like you can miss them. Just another thing I like about the show. But anyway, Alyssa, what did you really like about season 1?
Well, I would also add the character development. There were actually you could see the growth in all of them, especially Bulmer and Mariner, and which I needed because I felt at the beginning of the season, if there was no character development, if Bulmer was the exact same thing at episode 10 as he was episode 1, I would not like that. Traditionally in the past, animated shows have not, worried about character development. I mean, Bart Simpson and Lisa Simpson have been the same character for 25 years and the same age. And Homer Simpson's been the same. Like, it's a cartoon. We don't need to develop the characters. But I think in the modern era, yeah, you do need to develop the characters and tell a good story, or you're going to lose your audience. And especially in a Star Trek show, we want to see our characters developed. I think that was one of the reasons why Enterprise was not a big hit, is that most of the I feel like a lot of the characters are pretty, two-dimensional and didn't really develop, maybe with the exception of some of the main characters. So that's one of the things I really looked for in this show. And I felt like they did maybe less so with some of the other characters like Tindy, but I was glad to see Boiler and Mariner, and then Mariner's relationship with her mom developed big time. So I really like that about the show. That was something I was really looking for and would not have liked as much if they did not have that.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree, especially with the mom, because I think we did a video together when I was visiting you in Portland about episode 2, and I think I remember complaining about how the Mariner and Freeman being mother and daughter, how I hated that. I actually like it now. I'm surprised they actually turned around and they made it work, so I was really impressed with that. So Cardinal Doomsday in the chat says, am I the only one who's going to miss Boimler? And I'm going to say, no one's going to miss Boimler because he's still going to be on the show. They'll find a way. I bet you, guarantee you anything.
Well, Mike McMahon confirmed that.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah. In the Ready Room, he said, oh, yeah. He said, that's not something you undo. He's still going to be on the Titan, and Riker's going to be on. It's not the last we've seen of Riker. So it's going to be a thing, at least at the beginning of the season, where I think we're going to be cutting back and forth between the Cerritos and the Titan. And you would think at some point Boimler would end up back on the Titan again, or the Cerritos again. But the way he was talking, it sounds like at least the beginning of the season we'll be going between the two ships.
Yeah, and that's what I like about the show, because it wasn't like, because Don touched on earlier of it being episodic, and it is, because each episode is its own story. It's not like a chapter in the same story the way Discovery and Picard was, but it's serialized in terms of character development, in terms of what happens in one episode. Like if the ship, whatever, something happens to the ship, it carries on to the next episode, or something happens to a character, and that's what I like.
Yeah, that's what I need to see in a modern Trek, whether it's serialized or not. No more Chief O'Brien thinking that he was in a prison for 25 years and being traumatized and then being perfectly fine the next episode. I mean, come on, like that was fine in the 90s, but like we need that kind of thing now, and they did do it well in this show.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, and can we really touch on the fact we got the fucking Titan?
Yeah, and I like how they were actually name dropping the Titan all season. And I was like, and I actually think, I wonder if we're going to see Riker, because Jonathan Frakes is always hanging around. And I was like, I wonder if he's going to show. But they saved it for the finale, and I think it paid off. Like, they name dropped it earlier in that episode. They're like, the Titan's in the area. Now we got this. So I think they like built up to it nicely with that. And I wonder if that's part of the reason why they set it in the time frame of post Nemesis, is because they knew they wanted to do a Titan thing with Captain Riker. Because at first I was like, why didn't they just set it during Next Generation times? Because it seems like, but it also allows them to reference a lot of stuff that happened in previous Trek shows, like Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager. So I suppose that's maybe part of the reason why they set it in that time frame too.
And Mark, go ahead.
I just want to say, the Titan in the season finale better than all of those damn ships in the Picard season finale.
All the identical ships. Copied and pasted the same ship. Well, Mark, as I said in my comment on your video, is that my prediction is in Strange New Worlds, in the season 1 finale, Riker is going to travel back in time and save Christopher Pike, because that's now becoming a pattern of the season 1 finale, the last 2 Trek shows.
Yeah, no, that is true. Oh my god. But I wonder if they're still gonna do that Defenders type show. I don't know if that was like real or just rumor, but I don't know.
I don't know. And what, are they gonna have Bulmer in there, like as a cartoon walking around?
They didn't mention Lower Decks.
But Mariner in there. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that idea, honestly.
Oh yeah. Even if it's just like, well, they said it was going to be Picard, Discovery, and Strange New Worlds, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which Strange New Worlds was already on Discovery, so it's basically like Discovery and Picard, as far as I know.
But yeah, not a fan. I don't know. I think that might have just been a rumor, but we'll see. I also heard, I'm getting off topic now, but I heard this rumor that they're trying to bring Avery Brooks back to play Captain.
I heard that same thing too. And it's been confirmed that Janeway's going to be in the.
Oh yeah, Janeway's going to be in the Nickelodeon show. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I heard that too, that they're trying to get Avery Brooks back, but that could just be a rumor. Who knows?
Just keep him in the Celestial Temple.
All right. So anyway, getting back to Lower Decks, Norman Buckwell says O'Brien is the greatest person ever in Starfleet. Like that. I wonder. That was an interesting Easter egg. I wonder if, like, I don't know. I kind of wonder why they pinpointed O'Brien to be the best person. Is it because they always made him suffer all the time that they had to like say that he ended up being the best? I don't know.
Maybe it's Mike McMahon's personal all-time favorite character.
The O'Brien must suffer for our sins.
All right, so we got into what we liked about the show, but what did we not like? What do we think maybe didn't work as well? What maybe they could improve upon in future seasons? And Alyssa, we'll start with you this time.
I don't know, because a lot of my complaints from earlier in the season, I thought that did work on. Like they did do the character development. I was worried about that. You and I both had talked about. I know you talked about it in your reviews about how it was the same format every time with Boimler and Mariners, the A plot, and then Rutherford and Tindy in the B plot, and they did get over that. I think more character development, though, and maybe more of a rapport with Rutherford and Tindy with the other characters, because I didn't really feel that as much, maybe a little bit more toward the end. But I feel like there wasn't as much overall rapport between them and the other characters. And also, I feel like Tindy, and especially Tindy, but Rutherford was, as well, was a little underdeveloped. So I think that they should, I think they can build on their character. I would, excuse me. Tindy to me was actually kind of an annoying character, honestly, and I think because she seemed to be a one-trick pony, as far as I could tell, that she would just get overly excited about silly things, or I think, like you mentioned in your review, how she always was like, you would think it'd be something she'd be sad about, and she'd be like, "Oh, that's great." I don't know. It's just like I wanted to see. I can't say that I really hate that character, that they can't go anywhere with her, but I want to see them do something different with her, and Rutherford as well. I think Rutherford, he just got all excited about technical stuff and stuff, which was a nice little gag for a little while, but I want to see more development in that area, I think.
All right, Don, how about you? What didn't quite work for you this season?
Well, Mariner was actually annoying in the beginning. Very, very annoying. And I was like, oh my God, please don't tell me that, that she's like, I was thinking the term Mary Sue for maybe the first 2 to 3 episodes. But then once they developed their character, I'm like, oh, okay, all right. I think they realized what they were doing. Like, all right, we need to pull back just a little bit here. I actually wish they would have made Boimler a little more competent. In the beginning, he seemed to be a little too much of a not bumbling idiot, but it was kind of, I don't know. He just seemed to really, for someone to be in his position and wanting to be going towards command. He seemed almost like a goofier Barkley kind of character in the beginning when he first started, but then I think once, like I said, once they hit their stride, it was like, oh, okay, cool, I got him. So I think the things that didn't work for me only didn't work for like the first 2 to 3 episodes, and then by the time episode 4 came around, it was like, oh, okay, you know what? I think they've found their way with these characters, and let's see where it goes. And like I said, I was pleasantly surprised with how it all ended up. The only other thing that I can say I wasn't a fan of, that I'm still not necessarily a fan of, but it is what it is, the damn ship design. I'm sorry, the Cerritos is like one of the weirdest looking ship designs to me personally, because it's got the saucer, it's got the warp nacelles under it, and then the oh my god, the deflector array and all that, and I'm just like, it seems like there's a whole section of the ship that is missing, and if they have to get to the deflector array to make repairs, I mean, are they, do they have to suit up and then beam out there or something? I mean, how did they get there? Because I don't think that they're going through the. I don't think they're going through the pylons that the warp nacelles are attached to in order to get there. So I don't know. It just that's just something that just kind of bugged me. I'm like, I don't understand why we're making ship like that.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, I've heard some people complain about it. Some people are just a lot more into sort of the ship design. Me, I don't personally care. Just me. I mean, you bring up some good points, but I'm just like, I kind of think, yeah, sure, whatever. And I just never been one for ship design, but that's just me.
Yeah, some people pay attention to some things and others don't. Like, I don't really pay attention to ship designs that much either. So, but some people do.
Because honestly, like, I didn't think the Enterprise E was a very good ship design either. But that's just me.
Really, I thought it was better than the Enterprise D. Actually.
Oh, really? No.
Yeah. Look, to me, look. Here's the thing: the saucer section on the Galaxy class always seemed a little too cumbersome because if it ever came to a point where they had to land on a planet, that was the thing. I was like, "Oh, this thing automatically tips over if they ever need to land."
But only the saucer section's designed to land. But because it can separate, isn't that so cool? But anyway, that was silly. But anyway, in the chat, Colonel Doomsday says, I want to see a convo between Beckett Mariner and Michael Burnham, or cage fight, whatever works. I'm calling it for Mariner. I gotta say, if there was a cage fight between them, I think I'd pick Mariner to win, and I think that Burnham would be very annoyed by Mariner.
I would want Mariner to win. I'm sorry, I can't with Michael Burnham. I can't. Look,
then I have to go with a Burnham. I pick Burnham. Just to be.
Now, you know what's funny? Like, I don't know if you ever heard of this channel, Lore Reloaded, but he made a video about why Beckett Mariner is better than Michael Burnham, and I'm like, look, see, he said all the things that I've been thinking from day one.
Let's see. And Norman Buckwell says all Mariner may know of Michael Burnham as she staged a mutiny and later perished on Discovery at best. That brings up a good point. It's interesting that they didn't make any Discovery references. They made all sorts of other references, but did I miss one?
No. I wasn't going to comment on that. I was going to comment on the comment that's all she would know of Michael Burnham. Not necessarily because she knows all sorts of things she has no business knowing, honestly.
Well, here's the thing, though, too. Yeah. Remember, at the end of season 2 of Discovery, they basically said, "Hey, we're wiping Discovery from the records, and no one's ever going to talk about Discovery ever again."
Like the judge from The Simpsons. I decree we never speak about this ever again.
And they never existed. And I'm just like, what? Oh, okay, no, stop.
Well,
I can't.
To Cardinal Doomsday's point, if she can make a Zahn reference, Zahn never actually existed in the Trek universe. So if she can make a Zahn reference, she can make a Discovery reference. That's what I'm saying. Like, she knows things that she wouldn't really know just for comedic effect.
But she can't make a Star Trek Picard reference because that comes after.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. They could. She's made references that she shouldn't have any business making. And Bulmer has too. Like I mentioned, the Space Ghost with Dr. Crusher. There's no way he would know about that. Come on.
Did Bulmer make a Section 31 reference? I missed that.
Oh, I missed that too.
And And Norman Buckwell says the Bulmer should know about Section 31, but in Discovery Times, everyone knew about Section 31, so whatever. but,
It's funny
anyway,
for my job, since we have to wear, like you can see in the background there, that kind of black jacket with the gold lettering, and a very very tight gold lettering at this point. So since everyone else in at our job wears blue and we're the only team that wears black, we go in, we actually say that we're Section 31. So far no one picked up on the reference though.
Oh man, that's pretty cool. All right, so let me get into what I didn't really like about season 1, and like Alyssa said, like most things I didn't like, they kind of they self-corrected later in the season. But although I would say the pacing was an issue, it was more of an issue towards the start of the season. I think there were some episodes that had better paces later, but not all of them. I think some of them, I think that's something they sort of need to look at in season 2, of not being too sort of hectic and over the top and just and then like going at 1,000,000 miles per hour, because there's a couple of episodes where they did slow it down a bit, and I think it worked a lot better personally. So that's one thing I would like to fit. And let me throw out a specific character here, and I'll see what you guys think, because I know everyone else on the internet and everyone else I talked to is completely against me, but I hated Badgie. Personally, I thought, and I didn't, when I saw Badgie return, I'm like, oh no, not Badgie again, because I mean, it's kind of funny at first making fun of Clippy from Microsoft Word. I get it. It's kind of funny, but it's just to me, it's not enough making fun of the holodeck trying to kill you trope, and too being the holodeck is trying to kill you trope. What do you think of that, Alyssa? Any thoughts on Badgie?
I don't have strong feelings on Badgie either way. Like, I don't I hate him as much as you do, but I also don't think like it's the greatest thing ever or anything like that. I just think, yeah, it was fine. It was it was funny at first when making fun of like you said, the Microsoft Clippy thing. And I also thought it was funny at first how he was always loading. Like, when they brought him back, I was just like, I could take it or leave it. I wasn't like, oh no, they brought Badgie back, but I also wasn't like, oh yay, they brought Badgie back. Like, I was just like, whatever.
Do you have any thoughts on Badgie, Don?
Honestly speaking, so until I started watching other people's reviews, I had no idea that he was supposed to be a take on Microsoft Clippy. Maybe because I didn't have any Windows with Clippy in it. So I mean, look, it was a little overdone, but I mean, the show was supposed to be over the top, so it didn't really bother me. But
I mean, yeah, at best, I think it was a 1-episode thing. Like, I would have been fine if they kept him there, but everyone's like, "Oh, we have to bring Badgie back." I'm like, "No, please don't." And when they did, I'm like, "No." Like, I think he's just not. You only need him in 1 episode. He doesn't need to become a reoccurring character.
Well, I think he's pretty much done now. You know,
you don't know.
Not necessarily. They could easily bring him back.
They could, but I mean, think about it like this, right? Rutherford no longer has a cybernetic implant, and just like what you're gonna bring back Badgie, to torment someone who wouldn't even remember him at this point, and be like, oh yeah, I want to kill you. Oh really? Why do you want to kill me? Who are you? I'm Badgie. You created me. Really? When the hell did I do that?
I think he could get his memories back. I think that's still a possibility.
Yeah, but I do agree we don't need to see him again. Like, I don't feel like I need to see Badgie again at this point. I wasn't too upset with seeing him a second time, but if they try to make him a reoccurring character in the second season, I think I would be like, all right, okay. That's enough.
I will say I did have some major issues with Clippy. Clippy annoyed the fuck out of me, so maybe that's why I don't like Badgie either. But anyway, it's like, do you need help with that? No, go away. But anyway,
See, and maybe it's because I didn't have Clippy. Like, was that like a Microsoft
yeah,
like
Microsoft
internet?
Word, like the Word document when you're trying to type out like letters or whatnot, or
Like what
essays.
version of Microsoft was that?
Oh, I don't know.
It's not the one that I haven't seen Clippy in my current version of Microsoft Word.
Oh, really?
So I haven't noticed him as much. But I remember in a previous version, yeah, he used to just pop out all the time. Be like, do you need help? Like, go away. Yeah.
But anyway, Norman Buckwell says, I'm pro Badgie. I just wish Badgie was more clearly was sentient. Is that what you're trying to say? Rather than simply evil. Yeah. I mean, they name dropped Moriarty, and it seems like they just kind of should do the Moriarty trope, but more plain. I don't know. But Colonel Doomsday says everyone in Penske Discord hates Badgie. Well, that's good to hear. It's good to hear that I'm not alone in my hatred for Badgie. And Norman also says that Clippy was annoying. Clippy always popped up when no one else needed him, and when they did, nowhere to be found. Clippy's been gone for at least 10 years, I believe. Okay. That makes sense. All I know is Clippy was around when I was in college and writing a bunch of essays and used to annoy the fuck out of me. But anyway, cool. So let's move on and let's. All right. So we already talked about some of the characters like Mariner and Bournemouth, but let's get a bit more into them. Let's start with Mariner because I think that she's another thing that the show improved upon. Like I agree with what Don said earlier that she was. There's a couple times where they did portray her as a bit of a Mary Sue, and I think particularly episode 2 where she knew everything, and even the whole Ferengi thing was just a setup to make Bulmer feel better. And what really pissed me off though was episode 5 when she thought that Bulmer's girlfriend was an alien or a parasite, and turned out she was right. When they made her right, that really upset me because it's just saying Bulmer's an idiot, he's a moron, nobody likes him, and Mariner's awesome. And they're sticking with those stereotypes, and that pissed me off. But later episodes corrected that, and they delved deeper into her character, made her more vulnerable, particularly episode 9, which we'll get a lot into later on, and made her a really complex, troubled individual, which I preferred. So I think they kind of course corrected with their character, but at first maybe not handled her the best. Do I have an agreement on that one, or any other different thoughts, Alyssa?
No, I mostly agree with you, but I was trying to think that episode you're referring to, she wasn't exactly right because it wasn't that the girlfriend was a parasite. It was that the twist was that Boimler had a parasite.
Yeah, but she was right in so far that she didn't really love Boimler, and it was just a thing that was making her love Boimler.
Yeah, which that was ridiculous. I agree with you there. Yeah. I think overall I do agree with you, and I think honestly, what made her a stronger character is when they really started to develop her relationship with her mom. Like I think that made her a more interesting character.
Don, thoughts on Mariner?
Yeah, like I said, episodes 1 and 2 for me were really where I was like, oh my god, come on, man, why? I was like, oh, here we go, Mikey Spock all over again. But yeah, no, they course corrected, and like you talked about, Mark, in episode 9 was where a lot of it really came full circle. But the thing that I do like about her is she is someone who is intuitive, but she's a slacker. she is kind of almost Ferris Bueller in space to a certain extent.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, yeah.
because, I was gonna say, she has the potential to do great things, but it's just like, yeah, I don't want the pressure of having to live up to all of these expectations. I mean, her mother is a captain, her father is an admiral, so of course, anyone who actually would have known her is going to be like, "Hey, well, what about this, that, and the third? And how come you haven't done this?" And it's just like, it's not what I want to do. So yeah, I got no problem with her after episodes 1 and 2.
Yeah, I mean, I said in my review that I thought that Mariner was a very unique character because she's apathetic, and we never really got a character like that in Star Trek episode, because most shows, of course, is about the best of the best. Oh, we're all serving the best, but it's the benefit of having Lower Decks is about a second tier ship, and no one cares about it. It's about junior officers on that second tier ship, so they can have a character who just doesn't care about. In fact, not only doesn't care about being promoted, but actively does not want to be promoted and just wants to slack off. So I think she actually kind of made the show, and it was a really interesting twist in that regard.
Yeah, I think they exaggerate sometimes, like how she, like, everybody knows her and she just knows everyone. Like when Riker knew her, it was like, okay, but that's one of the things that I can forgive in a cartoon, because they're exaggerating everything a little bit, so I can deal with a little bit of exaggeration, so that's fine. Sometimes it did feel like a little much to me that, like, everybody knows who Mariner is.
I mean, well, she said she served on, like, what, 5 ships? I'm like,
oh,
5?
Okay. It seems like she's been in Starfleet for a little while, and she's obviously still an ensign just because she wants to be. I think, didn't she even mention she got demoted, that she used to be a lieutenant? I can't remember.
Yeah, because I rewatched episode 1 again because I was trying to figure out if they actually gave her father a name. But yeah, so she served on 5 ships, and the last one was the one where she got demoted and then got bounced to the Cerritos.
Okay, right. All right, so I gotta jump in the chat, and I gotta give a big thank you for Bob, or Redneck Lover 22, give me a $5 super chat. Thank you so much. So Bob says, "Is it sad that the hottest male officer ever in Star Trek might be Commander Ransom? I'd love to see a I'm not sure what that word is, version of him. Oh, non-animated. Okay, I think it's supposed to be a non-animated version of him. Probably wouldn't be as hot if it was a non-animated version. But I don't know if I can really speak to that. I never really thought of who. I always thought of Picard as the hottest male, but that's just me. I don't know if you guys have any thought.
How dare you? Will Riker is definitely gotta be. Come on, man.
But Captain Kirk was was the ultimate ladies' man.
Well, whatever.
All he had to do was just, like, yeah.
Whatever. Are we talking about old brown eyes, or are we talking about blue eyes? Though,
Yeah, Riker was basically a Kirk ripoff. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, well, you know what? I heard somewhere that basically they made him the first officer so that in case people didn't react well to Picard, they would either promote or kill off Picard and then have him be the captain.
Yeah, it's funny because my ex-wife used to constantly tell me how unsexy Riker was. So I kind of got that stuck in my head. Apparently, she really didn't find him sexy at all.
Patrick Stewart was like the People magazine sexiest man or something. When
he was.
I think while he was still in Star Trek, or in that era, sometime in the 90s, he was like the sexiest man alive thing.
Really?
Yeah,
it was.
You don't remember that? I remember.
It was a while ago. It was probably around the Next Generation era.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember Sean Connery, and at that point, it was kind of like Sean Connery, sexiest man alive. Now, this is not a retrograde.
But
looking back fondly on his Bond era.
a really funny thing I heard that apparently in season 3 of Voyager, how they got rid of Cass and brought in 709, that the original plan was to get rid of Harry Kim, but TV Guide had him as one of the most sexiest men on television, so they kept him because of that. I don't know if that's true, but Harry Kim, I don't know.
I mean, how was it that he was there for 7 years and couldn't get promoted? I call BS.
So do I. And that was the actor went to Brennan Berger, the showrunner, was like, "Can you promote my character?" It's like, "No, somebody has to be the ensign." I'm like, "What? What the fuck does that even mean?"
Oh, well, he also denied him. He also denied.
Oh yeah, wanted to direct as well.
Yeah, which I'm like, wow.
They really treated him like shit. But anyway, we're getting totally off topic.
I was going to say something else that goes along with this, but let's move on.
Let's see. Riker's chest hair is a total turnoff, says Bob. Yeah, some people just not into Riker. But anyway, let's see. So let's move on. Oh, to another character. Let's talk about Bulmer. To me, this would be a one-note character. You compared him to Barclay earlier. I would make more of a comparison to, speaking of Harry Kim, like someone like Harry Kim or Wesley, or even Nog. Maybe he's one of those younger, up-and-coming, eager to please type characters that we've seen before. But I think he's unique in this show because specifically they pair him with Mariner, and because of that makes him interesting, and because he learns to be like a bit silly and over the top because of Mariner, and of course they exaggerate his qualities because this is a comedy show, and I think that I actually really like the first scene of the whole show where Mariner's drunk and like messing around, "Give me honor" with the bat lemon. He's like, no. So I think Bulmer works. I guess they did, as you mentioned, Alyssa, earlier, they did give him a little character development because of he learned to let loose a little. And as particularly when he was in that Landru planet, like helping Mariner hang out stuff, but that was kind of just a different form of brown nosing because he was trying to suck up to her once he learned that she was Freeman's daughter. So I don't know how much he really progressed, but I guess he progressed a little. But I think he did work and was an interesting character mainly because of pairing him with Mariner. That pairing work, that if had he been alone and had been a stereotypical show, that he would have just been another Harry Kim type character. But all right, go ahead, Alyssa.
Well, it's the relationship between the two of them developed, because I think we kind of commented on this maybe when we did our episode 2 video together, that their relationship at the beginning of the season was repetitive. That Mariner was always right about everything, and Boimler was always the idiot. And if that had continued on for 10 episodes, I would have gone crazy. Like, I wouldn't have liked the show. So their dynamics evolved, and their friendship developed in a very believable way. So when I think about character development for Boimler, it definitely is directly related to his relationship with Mariner, as opposed to, he's always going to be a brown noser. I think that's just his character. But he can be other things, and he can have other interactions with people. It's not just that. So when I think about him, I definitely think about how his relationship with Mariner developed, and how, if it had been how it was in the first couple episodes, I wouldn't have liked it.
Any more thoughts on Bulmer, Don?
Listen, I like him as a character. Like I said, he reminds me of Barclay only in the way that he is awkward around people, uh, and he tries his best to please. It's not like how Barkley was just weird because he had his own little quirks, and when he wasn't able to fit in, he made up his own world where he had the caricatures of everybody who had in his mind mistreated him. Whereas Boimler is trying to find a way to fit in, but he's, because he is so eager to please, and he's not, just interacting with people for the sake of trying to get to know them. It comes off as him being even more awkward because when he gets in certain situations that you know that the average person might find as a regular thing to deal with, he kind of almost freaks out, and that's why, yeah, he kind of needed Mariner to kind of pull him back a little bit. He's just like, yo, guy, look, it's not this serious, man. Just chill. He's back, and so we saw the character progression. And I'll be honest with you, like in episode 10, I didn't think that in the beginning on the Landry planet that he was um, trying to suck up to Mariner. I thought that it was just him being like, okay, well, I see that Mariner is getting things done by using this particular style, so I'm gonna follow her. The fact that I happen to know that she's the captain's daughter is just an added bonus because maybe there might be some things that I can pick up that might actually get me promoted now. And I think that him trying to put it out in the open that he knew about that was um him trying to maybe stabilize the relationship a little bit and say, okay, hey, yeah, I know this big thing about you, but don't worry, we're cool. It's not a big deal to me. And it wound up becoming a big deal later on because once it got exposed and everyone else was asking Mariner for favors, it's kind of like, you know what, I might as well just pitch in too and see if maybe this might actually get somewhere. I think the brown nosing thing with Mariner was more of a fallback than his original intention.
Does she give you mommy captain kisses?
Well, just yeah, I thought he was totally brown nosing. I was like that. Especially since that would just be the theme throughout the whole episode. Anybody who knew about it would brown nose Mariner. So I thought it was just that. But that's
yeah. But think about it. I don't think if he was brown nosing, I don't think he would make fun of her with the whole "does she give Captain Mommy kiss?" He'd like, come on, like that. Well, that is certainly not going to endear you to her in that regard. If you're
that part of it, he was really fucking with her, which I think builds off of their previous relationship, which is why I really liked it. But anyway, let's go ahead and move on to our next character, Rutherford, who I think I like this character. I think he worked well for season 1. I think it's fine for season 1 because focus more on the main characters, Bulmer and Mariner. But I think they do need to develop him a bit more come season 2 because he is basically, I think we mentioned earlier, kind of just so excited about these mundane engineering things. And I think they hit on that, but they didn't hit on it too much where it got repetitive. I think they just touched back on it enough where they said that's part of its character, so we understood that and they moved on. And his cybernetic implant made him a bit unique and a bit interesting. Particularly that episode where he kept blacking out, and it was kind of making fun of the fact that computers constantly reboot and update, and it's when you don't want them to, which I really appreciated that. So yeah, I thought he worked fine. Maybe a little bit underdeveloped, but maybe they could do more in season 2. So, Don, do you have any more thoughts on Rutherford?
Yeah, Rutherford I liked a lot. It was he was absolutely hilarious because he is the guy who's definitely not only into his job but definitely into tech. So he reminded me a little bit of Jordy in that aspect. I mean, and even the way that they drew him, it kind of reminded me a little bit of Jordy. Uh, I mean, Jordy Jordy was a bit of a nerdy tech dude, and Rutherford kind of has that same feel to him, but he's even more nerdy and tech based. So yeah, man, I hope that we get a little more dimensional. Yeah, more dimensions to him. Like I said, I like that. I like that he's the nerdy tech guy, but yeah, we need to see more of him than just, oh, did you see the new tricorder came in, or hey, did you see that there's a .5 variance in the new warp coil array, and like that's cool and all, but I mean just a little bit more from it.
I agree. I think that was fine for season 1, but moving forward, we can't just he can't just be that forever. Like there's gotta be a little bit more than that. But what I want to know is, how is this cybernetic being, how does he relate to the Borg? Like there was a time where he was fighting the Borg, or I don't remember. Was it the holodeck when he was with what's his face, Shax, and
Shax,
when he was trying out different jobs, and like I don't know. How would the Borg assimilate him, because he's already a cyborg? They would just, I don't know. I have a hard time wrapping my head around these cyborgs that they're introducing in these new Trek shows like Arium. And I didn't get, especially in the Discovery era, that Arium would exist and that Rutherford now exists. Like I just got no hint before these new shows. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe Cardinal Doomsday will point out some obscure reference from the original series or Next Generation about a cyborg, but it seems like something they have introduced in the new Trek that didn't exist before, like cyborgs outside of the Borg. I had never heard of that before.
Yeah, I think it is something new, but I think it is different from the Borg. It just seems like more of an enhancement rather than the full-on like cyborg. Like they ripped it off of him, and it seems like he doesn't have it anymore. I got the impression it was kind of similar to Arium, where it was like an accident and he needed it to, yeah. But Arium was too much. I will agree with that. All right, so speaking, Don, you brought up Geordi. Anyone notice how like there's a shit ton of background characters with visors on? Like, I don't think we've seen that in any other Star Trek show.
I didn't notice a shit ton. I did notice one over here and there, but I didn't notice a shit ton.
I noticed a shit ton.
I only noticed like one.
What's that?
I only noticed one.
Oh, really? Well, by a shit ton, I mean like 5, but I consider that a lot because we don't normally get some. In fact, no, I think we saw 2 in the background of the last episode alone. And one shot had 2 people standing by the side, both had visor. But anyway, maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, let's talk about Tendi. Alyssa, you brought up Tendi earlier, how you thought that she was her one beat, being excited by everything, and she would do this thing where she would act like you would think she would hate it or be appalled, but she'd be like, I love it! And it kind of gets one beat, and she's like just overly excited about everything. And I agree. I think this is the character they need to work on the most. And I think how I said with Rutherford, I think he was okay for season 1. Tendi, I think they could have done more with in season 1. I did like the character beat of the fact that she was one of those people. It reminded me of like a Seinfeld thing. One of those people who were like upset that there's someone who didn't like her. And she was like, hey, how can no one then not like me? And she got obsessed with making that person like her. So that I thought that was an interesting character beat, and I think maybe the best they used her was in episode 9 when they mistook her for the cleaner, and she kept trying to mention she's not a cleaner, and she couldn't. Like that was probably the best use of her. I thought that was hilarious. But other than that, I think she was kind of a 1B character. And they had that one thing when she created the dog, like trying to illustrate just how alien she was. I didn't get that. I didn't think that was funny, but I don't know, just me. Don, your thoughts on Tindy?
Yeah, I agree. Tindy with the everything is over enthusiasm with her, and it's funny because that's not how they actually started her character. Like I said, I rewatched episode 1 today. And
but I thought she was excited by everything when she first came aboard the Cerritos. She's like, "Look, it's the Cerritos." Was she not like that in episode 1?
Well, yeah, it was like, "Oh, I'm on the Cerritos," and so it was that when she first gets on board, and then the other part was where they bring her to the lower decks, and she sees the view of of the ship going through space, like I guess the rear window or whatever. But other than that, it was kind of not as much enthusiasm, but everything was definitely uh, you know positive vibes everywhere. And yeah, some of it was a little overblown, but it wasn't to the point where it's like, all right, well, god damn it, will you please have her do something else? Not in the first episode. But yeah, after a while is like Peanut Hamper. She gets excited and says, "Oh, I love that name, Peanut Hamper." Really? you know. Um, yeah. So yeah, they have work to do on Tindy, but I actually still do like her interactions with Rutherford because he needed someone to kind of to balance him out a bit. Um, and I think that they could have a um, great interactions between the two of them. So I mean, like, and it doesn't even have to be a romantic thing. They can just wind up being friends. But I think those two actually do work together. And to me personally, Rutherford and Tindy actually work together a little better than Boimler and Mariner do. But I mean, that's just
Hot take. All right, Alyssa, your thoughts on Tindy?
Least favorite character by far. She doesn't do anything for me in the show. I think they can. I don't think she's hopeless. Like I think they could develop her in season 2, but honestly, I found her relationship with Rutherford to be mostly boring and repetitive. I don't think it really developed all that much because she's such a one-dimensional character. You can't develop anything with a one-dimensional character. So just did not like this character at all. And best case, she was tolerable. In the worst case, she was just irritating, like really irritating. And then in episode 10, I just kind of ignored her. Like I kind of just wasn't even paying attention to the scenes with her and Peanut Hamper because I just just ignore her. Because she like that's what I do to a lot of people when they annoy me. I just ignore them. So I just was kind of done with her by episode 10. But I don't think she's irredeemable. Like I think that they can work on her and develop that character more. But I did not care for anything about this character. I can't think of any positive things about this character. Honestly.
Not even the episode when she was the cleaner and went on the rhyme.
Oh, that was a funny thing. Yeah, okay, I did like that. But it's not about the character. It was more about the comedy around her.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did like that. And then didn't she kill them? And they were like, whoa, that's not what we were talking about.
We thought we were just going to beam us away.
Yeah. No, that was funny. But it wasn't funny because of her, in my opinion. But
All right, so Mr. Pete says that Rutherford and Tindy will just be plutonic, and I hope so. I am actually very much against the concept of a romance. You can tell they were like heavily hinting at that, and I was like, no, please don't, just don't. And now that Rutherford has lost his memory, maybe they're not going to go that way.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, them being platonic friends is cool. I like their interactions. I mean, like them, yeah, them being buddies is fine. Leave it that way.
Oh yeah, Mr. Pete brings up another really great Tindy moment is when she says no to Mariner in the holodeck, which I like that because she was being uncomfortable with being called a pirate and because she was stereotyping Orions, the whole pirates.
yeah,
And I love that because it played to the Star Trek trope of constantly every species has one characteristic. Klingons are warriors and Vulcans are logic.
I did. I like that too, but I thought that Orion females were like the sex slaves. Wasn't that their deal?
Yeah, and in Enterprise, they revealed that they were actually controlling the males, that the sex slavery.
Oh, yeah. I'm not up to date on all my Enterprise
Yeah.
episodes. So I don't remember that one.
That was a really bad episode.
So I was just I like that. I was just confused by the pirate thing. I don't ever remember hearing Orions being pirates before. Where does that come from?
Journey to Babel. They were the pirates that were sort of attacking.
Oh, right. You didn't really see them. You just heard.
You didn't see them.
Yeah.
And it was also, I think they had them being pirates in Enterprise as well. And there's an animated series episode called The Pirates of Orion, which everyone, it's actually my favorite animated series episode, but everyone in the episode keeps calling them Orions, and it annoys the fuck out of me. They're not Orions. But anyway,
maybe some sort of a copyright issue at the time that NBC owned the term Orion or something or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, that was weird. But anyway, okay, so let's talk about the senior officers. Let's just do them all in one go. I think most of them are pretty stereotypical one-note characters, but I think that's fine. I think that's all they needed to be. They served and I actually think they worked really well for the humor, having Ransom be this stereotypical Riker Kirk handsome man stereotype who'd beat people up like that, which I thought was hilarious. And Shax being the sort of Worf, I want to destroy everything. Like that episode where they had him go, "Come on, let me fire the phasers." Like I loved that. I thought that was the best thing ever. And the cat Doctana, I think her name is very Pulaski, like she's the stereotypical grumpy doctor type. And so they all sort of fit those stereotypes, and I think it works. I think the show's not about the senior officers, it's about the junior officers. I think Captain Freeman is probably the one they developed the most, mainly because of her relationship with Mariner, and she's the captain. And they had all these jokes about how she was going to say it's warp time and stuff like that I think really worked. So I think these guys worked. I think the show got better at using them too later on. Earlier, I thought maybe the way they used them didn't quite work as much, but I think later in the season they got more of a handle of how to integrate them in the show without focusing on them and not about it being about them. So what do you guys think of this? Alyssa, we'll start with you.
Well, the show is called Lower Decks, so the senior officers needed to be not in the limelight. They needed to be more one-dimensional. So they did it exactly the way it should have been done. I thought that it was great, and I thought that they did very well at playing off of the Star Trek stereotypes for each role: the grumpy doctor, the security officer that wants to kill everyone, the swashbuckling first officer. They did a great job of really emphasizing those Star Trek stereotypes, and I think that's the purpose of the bridge crew, like you said, with the exception of the captain. So yeah, the show needed to really focus on and develop the Lower Decks characters more, because that's what the show is called. If they had developed or made the bridge crew more multi-dimensional in the first season, it would just be like, well, this isn't Lower Decks. This is why you call the show Lower Decks. I could potentially see them developing these characters more as we move forward, and that's okay, I think. But definitely, at least in the first season, the show is called Lower Decks. So I thought they used these characters well.
Cool. Don, your thoughts on the senior officers?
Listen, I like, I like the senior officers and the fact that they are a bunch of goofballs. You have the captain who is unsure about everything, who just wants to kind of one up the people who are in the same kind of group that she's in. It's like, yeah, we know we're not the best and the brightest, but if I'm gonna be, lower tier, I'm gonna be top of the lower tier. So that's fun. Ransom. I mean, listen, that whole thing about, I'm not being hard. I mean, well, she doesn't give me hard. I mean, I'm not hard right now. Oh my god, that was absolutely hilarious. I mean, especially, I don't know, it was a little weird because I could have sworn earlier in the series that the captain was talking to Ransom as if he already knew that Mariner was her daughter. So I don't know. I gotta go back and watch.
Yeah, I went back and watched that scene recently, and I think I just assumed, like, if you're watching that scene, you can assume from the context that Ransom knows, but they never specifically said it. So I think, like, they're implying that he didn't know, but if you go back and watch the scene, they never specifically said that that's your daughter. They were just talking about what to do with the problem of this ensign who's misbehaving. Because I got that impression too. I was surprised when they revealed no one knew.
Yeah, I actually didn't get it at first when Bulmer was like, all shook up after watching the holodeck recreation where Captain Freeman says that Mariner's her daughter. I'm like, what's he worked up about? I thought everybody knew already. Like, I just assumed everyone knew. Like, it took me a while to get that everyone didn't know. So I was surprised by that. I don't think the show did a great job of making that clear.
Yeah,
because that's a common complaint. I heard a lot of people say that.
The only one I thought didn't know was Ransom, honestly speaking. I mean, no, the only one that I thought did know was Ransom. Yeah. I didn't think that anyone else other than Ransom knew, and that was just more based off of, well, it seems like Ransom has been Freeman's first officer for a while, and they seem to have, pretty good rapport. It didn't seem like, all right, I'm your captain, you're first officer, that's it. They seemed to kind of have a friendly back and forth. So I'm like, oh, that did, whereas the other members, like is it Zax? That's the what's the Sax? Yeah, Shax. Okay, yeah. He seemed to be very much on his own. They didn't show. I mean, like, obviously they didn't give him much to do, but the things they did give him to do didn't really lend to him being kind of very interactive with the rest of the bridge crew. And the doctor to me, Pulaski-esque, but I got a lot of McCoy vibes. Especially with the kind of curtness with which he, or is it she? No, it's she. Because the Pulaski thing, Pulaski wasn't curt with people. Pulaski was just kind of, she seemed to come across as if she had a very kind of arrogant, know-it-all kind of vibe. Like, I'll never forget when she first encounters Data and she calls him Data and he's like, sorry, my name is Data. And she's just like, what's the difference? Like, one is my name and one's not. You know? So,
Uh,
you know, I didn't get that from the Doctor. I get it was a lot more McCoy than Pulaski, but I can understand the I can understand where you're coming from as far as, because Pulaski did seem to kind of bark orders a little bit too, whereas McCoy really didn't bark orders unless Kirk pissed him off.
yeah. I've heard both. I've heard comparisons to both. I think she was kind of a combination of both of them.
Yeah, I think that's
Wait, what's Captain Freeman's first name?
Carol.
Carol. So it won't surprise me if she's like, David Carroll, I'm a doctor, not a.
What I wonder if they're going to reveal that Commander Ransom is related to Captain Ransom, who was on the Equinox in the Voyager episode.
Oh God!
Yeah, I've been thinking about that too. Like, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
that would be so. I mean, here's my question. I wonder if Janeway, did they ever tell Starfleet about what happened with Ransom in the Delta Quadrant when they got back?
You assume it'd be in their logs that they gave them to once they got back.
I mean, but listen, Ransom was fucking nuts. Like, you know what? Yeah, look, just in case if someone happens to stumble upon the ship later, you know what? Maybe we might want to keep that out of the logs. You know, if they're trying to present their whole utopian vibe, you know, it's like, yeah, if anyone finds this, I don't know if we want to, you know, talk about the rogue captain who was sitting here fucking scavenging parts of the Delta Quadrant.
Anyway, let's go ahead and move over to, is there any one episode you want to talk about, special episode of note, one that stood out to you for being particularly good or particularly bad? Don, we'll start with you.
Episode 9. Because as ridiculous as it was such a revealing moment for not only Boimler but also Mariner, because this was the one where she finally had to admit, not only to herself but to her mom, that, yeah, you know what, I'm not living up to my potential on purpose, you know. And she had to take a look in the mirror and see it. It's like, yeah, you know, you're out here screwing up just to be screwing up, and it's like there's a better way for you to be doing things. And so when she finally came to the realization that, you know, the things that she's been doing to sabotage her career, she doesn't have to in order to stay where she is. She can be a good officer and still, you know, be in the lower decks. I think that, you know, hopefully going forward with season 2, you know, they'll continue that thread. Obviously, they continued it in episode 10, but I hope that they continue that thread where she, you know, is able to be a good officer, you know, and doesn't always have to rely on rebellious antics in order to try to make a point. I mean, yes, you still want her to be a rebel because, you know, she wouldn't be as fun if she's not. But yeah, it's just one of those things where, you know, I'm like, finally, this is what we've been waiting for her to be, and it's glad that she actually got to this realization. So now we can move forward with her, hopefully being an even stronger character than she's already been.
Yeah, and the thing you bring up is a really strong, really good character story, and you bring up a lot of great points about that episode. But the other thing about it is why I love that episode so much. It is my favorite of the season. It's not only all of that, but it's fucking hilarious at the same time. It's just making fun of all the Star Trek movie tropes, and it like hits the nail on the head, and like the credits flying and hitting them over the head, and then like go flying around the ship on the shuttlecraft for like 10 minutes going ooh.
Mark, the shuttlecraft scene just had me in stitches. That was so good. Such a great parody, and might be one of the best parody moments of the show. They're flying around on the shuttlecraft, going, "Oh, I love that."
Cool. And did you have any more thoughts on this episode, Alyssa?
Yeah, this is my favorite too. I love this episode, and great character development. Like Don pointed out, Mariner's strongest episode of the season, and but the movie parody was great. And also Rutherford's. I think it was Rutherford who had the line about the. Oh, well, it's just a movie, so we can do whatever we want with the transporter. Yeah, a lot of great lines, a lot of great parodies of the Star Trek movies, which I wasn't expecting. I wasn't necessarily expecting them to riff off of the movies this season. So I just love this episode for so many reasons.
I think it's great that they had one episode that specifically focused on the movies.
Yeah,
I thought that was a really great sort of thing. Now, getting back to the Mariner thing, because I recently watched this review that had the perspective that in this episode she went too dark, and they thought it was unbelievable for her character to go around killing holographic versions of the crew and taking such glee out of it, and then going back to being this loving person who was even more understanding at the end. And I personally disagree with that perspective, because I think it was sort of therapy. It's kind of like, when you go to the therapist's office and they tell you to beat a pillow, to punch a pillow or something like that. It was just like a therapeutic outing, letting her rage out, and then realizing she was going too far and was able to release it and move past it. So for me, I thought it worked perfectly.
Well, I thought they made it very clear that was therapeutic. Like, I think she used the word therapy.
Yes.
Because that was the episode they made her go see the therapist. And then it ended up, she said something about, the therapy worked or something, but it wasn't the therapist. It was going into the holodeck and doing what she did. So I agree with you, absolutely.
Yeah, and what I love about this episode is that the holodeck safeties never went off. No one ever got trapped in the holodeck. It didn't try to kill anyone. Well, come on. You can have great holodeck episodes without shit trying to kill you.
Yeah, I always wanted to know, like, who's in charge in Starfleet of the holodeck safeties? Those people need to be fired. Like, holodeck safety there shouldn't really honestly be any such thing. Like, it shouldn't ever go off. Yeah, but I like that too.
So, Alyssa, is there a special episode of note that you'd like to talk about, one that stood out to you?
Well, that's my first favorite, but my second favorite is actually the finale. They do hit you with a lot of references, and I love it. I love the return of the Archons at the beginning.
When Drew apologizes.
He's like, shut up, or I'll just paradox your ass, or whatever what she said. Then Drew apologizes. That's the kind of thing, if you hadn't watched the original series in a while, like if I hadn't just watched the original series like a couple years ago, I don't know that I would remember that episode as clearly, but it was, so if you haven't seen that episode in a while, it may not make as much sense, but I loved it. And I did like that they brought in a, what do you call, I'm blanking on the names of those things, those,
the exocoms?
Exocoms, yeah. I again didn't love the Tindy aspect of it, but I loved the scene at the end. I think you pointed this out in your review too, Mark, where the exo they were like, "Oh, this is just perfectly logical. Everything makes sense. If only we had this non-sentient or this non-organic being that could be small enough to fly in there," and like everything pointing to the exocomp. Which is such a trope in Star Trek where they're like, oh, well, if only we had this. And it just points to one character in particular. And the exocomp's like, yeah, I'm good. I'm going to pass. That was good. And let's not leave out the Riker in the room. I loved Riker in this episode. I did write a comment on your video because I did take a little bit of a disagreement on you. We were talking about how silly Riker was or just how out of character he was. I thought that was quite intentional because Riker is kind of now. It is interesting, as you said, is that this is both a comedy and inside of the Star Trek universe. But in order for it to kind of coincide with the other Star Trek universe, the rest of the Star Trek universe, those characters kind of have to adapt to this Lower Decks world. So Riker stepping into Lower Decks had to be a Lower Decks type of character, and I thought it was great. And the line of the season for me is when he came back and was like, "Oh, I was just hanging and watching some Jonathan Archer in the holodeck," and he just dropped in there. They had a long road getting from there to here, and I laughed for like 10 minutes when he was like, "Yeah, it was just a long road getting from there to here." Just the way that he delivered that line, like nonchalantly, and then they just moved on. But I loved Riker in this episode. So this was just a fun episode for me, and I thought a very, very good way to end the season. And I did like that they put Bulmer on the Titan to kind of mix things up a little bit, and that they are going to keep him on the show. I did like how they ended it like that.
I did want to respond to the Riker thing because I agree. I hear what you're saying. I agree. They did need to sort of comedy up in the bits for him to work in the show. I just think that maybe they could have pulled back on it a little bit. Like I think the way they did with Troy was perfect for me, and I think maybe they could have pulled back Riker just a little bit. Still had him be a bit over the top. But it wasn't a big deal for me anyway. So I still loved seeing him. Like I still thought it was great.
It's really a matter of personal taste because I thought it was perfect. I loved Riker in this episode, but it's just a matter of what your personal taste is, I think.
Yeah, Don, any thoughts on this one?
Warp factor in a 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean. That was probably the most creative way that they've ever had anyone go to warp. The fact that Bulmer is still going to be around, and I mean, we got the fucking Titan. Think about it. Like, how long ago did Nemesis come out? Like all that time, we've never seen, mythical Captain Will Riker, mythical Titan, and now we're gonna get to see it, hopefully ongoing. And I mean, listen, episode 10 to me was also phenomenal. Episode 9 I like just a little more. But episode 10, also very phenomenal, and I can't wait to see what they do with these characters going forward, and if we're gonna have any more other outside references. And I just thought about something. You said they couldn't reference Picard because it takes place in the future, but they can. You want to know why? Dr. Alton Inigo Soon. Remember that one of the big complaints was how in the world is there a Soong that's been around for this long that no one's ever heard of that just automatically just pops up out of nowhere and no one ever knew that Dr. Soong even had a biological son. So yeah, I think that if they if they wanted to just to kind of
Right. That's
you know
that is the thing. I'm sorry, Mark. That was the thing. The one thing about Picard that pissed me off the most, that I hated more than anything else that that show did, is there's no way. That's one of the worst retcons I've ever seen. They never flat out said that Dr. Nerney Sung never had a biological son, but it was very heavily implied that he never had a biological child. Very heavily implied. So that. I don't know if it would make it better or not if they put him into lower decks. I don't know.
See, I'd rather they not.
Yeah.
I'd rather they just stay away from it. I'd rather that they try to pretend that didn't exist.
I mean, listen, he lives. He's a living, breathing thing. He is canon. I mean,
they can reveal that he's one of those shapeshifters that like put the memory of in other people's heads, and he doesn't really exist. Oh god, it's so dumb. But anyway, I gotta mention the chat here. Norman says that the Enterprise theme song for 10 minutes would make Troy beg for the music box music from the survivors. The music that was playing in her head over and over again, and that made her go insane. Yeah, I agree with that totally. But anyway, it's been a long time. But anyway, I want to talk about the episode Moist Vessel. That was my second favorite episode of the season. I thought it was when the show really hit its stride. I know that Alyssa, you and I very strongly disagree on the subplot, so I'll just talk about the main plot with the which I thought was where they really started to develop Mariner and Freeman's relationship, and I thought that's when they really started to get into Mariner's character. I love the whole storyline about they're promoting her to piss her off and how miserable she was when she was promoted. Like, that, some really funny scenes, like the poker game where it was like, I'm gonna fold, and then someone's like, I wonder. It's like, you're gonna fold. Everyone folds. And she started freaking out. Like, that was hilarious. And then they had the plot of the episode. I thought felt like this could be a Next Generation episode. It could be a normal episode where this terraforming alien ship takes over and the ship starts getting terraformed, and they do stuff that they basically couldn't do in live action because it would be prohibitively expensive, and the animation takes it where there's waterfalls and shit going over the ship, and the captain and Mariner have to work together. And plus, it has my favorite joke of the entire season with the sensors. It's like, because I loved it. Wait, did you just say sensors? It's like, of course, everyone says sensors. And it's like, no, you don't. She's like, Mariner, I thought we understood each other. Well, maybe you need to readjust your sensors. So like, I was dying from laughter at that one. I thought it was absolutely hilarious. Anyway, you guys have any thoughts on that episode?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. Yeah, that was one of my favorite scenes of the season as well. And at one point, he even said, I forget what word he says, but everybody knows I mispronounce everything. And he mispronounced some other word, which I forget.
Yeah, he said, "Are you making fun?" Well, he was like, "Fun of me," instead of saying "fun." He pronounced it wrong. I was like, "Are you making fun of me?"
Yeah, who has said sensors before, though, on the show, on the other Star Trek?
Oh, God, there's been a couple.
Crazy. Yeah. There definitely is something that I heard before. So when he said it that way, it kind of sounded like natural because we've heard that before. So the fact that they pointed that out. Yeah, I don't know. Do we want to talk about the subplot and how much we disagree with it on that? Because this, to me, I love the main plot, and that subplot is by far the worst thing the show did ever. I just thought it was terrible, but I know you liked it, so I don't know how much we want to argue about it.
I'm really puzzled about it because I watched it again and I still love it.
I'm really puzzled that you like it. Like I don't, I think part of the reason was you brought up the Stargate thing. I never watched Stargate. To me, there was like not only aside from the fact that Tendi was absolutely obnoxious and not the slightest bit funny, but that the plot seems so not Star Trek. And once you brought up the Stargate thing, I was like, oh, okay, well that makes sense. It's a Stargate thing because it was so not Star Trek. It was so weird. I was like, what? It was so out of place. Like I was like, what the hell is happening here?
Well, I mean, they mentioned some Star Trek things that are similar to it, like Wesley Crusher and someone else who ascended. But it did reminisce. It was more reminiscent.
It was way too like, yeah, I don't know, like.
But I just thought it was hilarious when the guy like all started like seeing like a giant koala bear or something or whatever.
Koala.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen. I mean, look, the subplot with Tendi trying to get the guy to ascend was absolutely ridiculous. But the ending where he actually does ascend, come on, that was epic because it was absolutely the most ridiculous thing possible. With him feeling like he's getting ripped apart, see him go into the damn portal, and then it was like. There's a freaking illuminated koala in there. It's like, what the fuck does that even mean? You know, and then it's like, and then he's gone. So, I mean, personally, I liked it for the ridiculousness. But the other stuff that led up to it, yeah, with Tendy's whole like I have to be liked kind of thing, that was actually a little annoying.
Reminded me of Seinfeld. I liked it. But anyway, Don, what did you think of the main plot of this episode?
The main plot, I mean, hey, listen, Mariner was getting what she deserved. You know, that's what she gets for kind of being a spoiled, petulant little child instead of doing her job. It's like, okay, fine. We're going to make you suffer for your insolence by giving you a promotion. How do you like that? You know, and her having to go into the damn card game and just like, you're gonna fold. Come on, you already know you're gonna fold. It's like, yeah, you know, just her having to deal with the mundane kind of interactions, you know, and this is part of the character development and showing how showing, you know, how she needs to sometimes follow the rules. You know, you can't just always decide you want to run off and be a maverick. So yeah, you know, I liked the main plot because I love it when characters get what they deserve and they actually learn something from it.
All right, so I did want to point out in the chat, Norman Buckwell says that since he watched the episode, I saw a couple Voyager episodes and noticed that Tuvok pronounces censors that all the time. Actually, now that you mention it, I do see that Tuvok would always say censors.
You know,
I knew it was I can't remember who it was, but I knew it was somebody who did it regularly.
I mean, well, you know, the thing about it is because Tuvok had that very distinct way of speaking, and it's like going back and looking at the original series versus looking at Tuvok. It's like, is this supposed to be his approximation of what he thinks someone who is always suppressing their emotions, like how they would talk? Because even in the original series, and I don't know if it's supposed to be because Spock is half human, you know, Spock still sounded regular. He didn't.
Wait,
He
didn't
didn't
Spock
sound.
say sensors too? Maybe not.
Possibly. But Tuvok, I never really bought him as emotionless. He just always seemed pissed off to me. He was always annoyed. He was never really emotionless.
That's why I love the episode where Neelix called him out on it. It's like, no, you're being arrogant. But anyway, I'm digressing. So yeah, let's go ahead and wrap things up with our thoughts on season 2, what we expect to see or what we hope to see, maybe in season 2. I'll start with, I think that I like the where season 1 left off, and I think with the because if they do the concept where they revisit a lot of like planets that were visited in just one episode and other shows like the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and whatnot, I would love that. That sounds like a really great concept to me, like they did last time with Landru. And if they keep doing that and do it for comedic effect, and I love how they're kind of making fun of the episodic nature of the original series, Next Generation, how they would just, all right, off to the next planet, bye, and just leave them and they like fall back into the chaos. Like the one episode I think of is that one episode, The Apple, that was also about like a computer that controlled society, and Kirk destroyed it. And like they were totally dependent on it for food, clothing. Kirk just destroyed it. I was like, okay, see you guys later. Like,
I was gonna say I would love for them to revisit that planet.
So I hope, because I agree, I see why they couldn't do that in season 1, because they need to introduce the characters first in the situation, and they couldn't see as being too dependent on previous shows. But now that they got their shit established, I would love to see more of that. I think that, to me, that sounds like a great idea. But anyway, Don.
I'd love to see where they take this, how they're going to introduce new characters. Obviously, we need a new chief of security. Is the new chief of security going to be kind of in the same vein as the last one? How long is Boimler going to be on the Titan? Is there going to be a shift to a new ship at all? There are so many ways in which they can take this and do things that they've never done with the Star Trek series that I'd be excited to see, because we've never seen them have like split stories with like two ships as like the main driving focus. So I think that could be pretty interesting if they're gonna do something like that, where you have Boimler is maybe the first 3 or 4 episodes is on the Titan, and he's oh man, I remember we did this on the Cerritos, this, that, and the third, and then finally, somewhere towards the middle, he transfers back over, or maybe he stays on the Titan until the end of the season and finally transfers back over. But there are things that he brings with him from there. So I mean, it would be very interesting to see what they continue from last season. I mean, well, from this season, and what they introduce into the next one.
One thing I will say, Don, is that the Enterprise did something similar for like 3 episodes when Trip transferred to another ship, where he was on another ship.
Oh, sorry.
No. I have a big correction for you, because I know how much of a huge Discovery fan you are. But for a great part of season 2, Ash Tyler was on the Section 31 ship and would communicate with Burnham on Discovery. And that's actually what it made me think of when they were doing that. I was like, oh, it'll be like Ash Tyler and Burnham. Like, it's the same kind of thing, except maybe Don will like it a little better because he doesn't like Discovery. But But and then eventually Ash Tyler ended up back with them again. So I kind of pictured it like that. Bulmer doing his own thing on the Titan, but then like having communications with Mariner. But who knows how long it'll last? Maybe it'll only be one episode. Maybe it'll do it for the whole season. Who knows? But just as far as things that I want to see in season 2 or hope to see, I do like what you said, Park, about the like them revisiting planets. I don't know that I need to see that every single episode. I don't know how I would feel about it being every episode, but I do want to see more of that. In fact, I do want to see them go back to the planet from the Apple. In that planet, yeah, that was the worst like violation of the Prime Directive. Kirk was basically like Prime Directive, Prime Corrective. and those people, they were completely dependent on that computer, and Kirk was, and at the end, they were like, and the computer made them live forever, so they didn't need to procreate. So they were like, 6? What is 6? And Kirk's like, yeah, you'll figure it out. It'll be fine. It took off. So I think that would be like an ideal candidate of a planet for them to return to. But I think like going back to planets with episodes where people didn't like actually seeing the Space Ghost again, or going back and seeing what Armis things that notoriously people didn't like, that they could do great parodies of. I definitely would. Yeah,
they could visit Angel One.
Angel One. What was the one episode where they thought Picard was a god? They kept on calling him the Picard.
Who watches the Watcher?
Yeah. I would love for them to return to that planet. That was
yeah. I mean, I don't want it to. I guess I wouldn't want it every episode because I don't want them to rely too heavily on previous series. They need to be their own show too. But I do want to see more of that kind of thing. And as I mentioned earlier, I do want to see some more character development, especially with Rutherford and with Tendi. And I want to see a little more Riker. Mike McMahon mentioned we would see Riker again. He didn't say if it would just be like one more brief cameo in or in episode 1, or if Riker is going to be reoccurring. I don't know, but I would love to see some more Riker. And I'm very curious too, like who's going to be the new security officer. I would hope that they would do something a little different, not just have the same type of character, because otherwise why kill off that character if you're just going to replace him with the same type of character?
I'm kind of still hoping that he's resurrected and they make this opportunity to make fun of like other resurrections.
Well, did you ever watch the Ready Room?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, because then the guy who plays Rutherford was like, I got an idea. Like, Rutherford should have like an implant in his head that has a Shax talking to him.
Oh, right.
I think something like that is probably more likely than a full-on resurrection. But
I can see them making fun of like a Search for Spock.
Yeah. Well, they did that at the episode 9. They made fun of Search for Spock.
Oh, yeah. So Mr. Pete is talking about a planet they want them to revisit. I think he's referring to Code of Honor. Nobody needs to revisit that planet ever again.
No. Yeah. I mean, but yeah, I think that one you should stay away from. But I think a lot of the other like bad ones, I would love to see them revisit just to make fun of them. Yeah. But that one we can steer clear of that.
That should be erased from canon. But anyway, all right, cool. Well, real quick, what would you give this season out of 10? 9 out of the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best. I'm giving it an 8. I already said I gave it an 8. What about you guys? Don, what about you?
Yeah, you know what? I would say an 8 as well. You know, slow start, but when it picked up, and great finish. Again, to me, this is the Star Trek that I think a lot of people who have been complaining about the previous 2 seasons, you know, as long as you're not like, oh, Star Trek isn't supposed to be comedy. Yeah, how dare you? I can't drink my tea pinky up to this. No, as long as you're not like that, then you should be perfectly cool with it. 8 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, and then one can only hope, or I can only hope, and maybe Mark agrees with me, that maybe getting this taste of what the Star Trek that you really want in a comedy will maybe make people realize what a freaking ripoff the Orville is. But and like realize, actually, no, this is actual Star Trek. Okay. Anyways, I digress.
Had to go there,
it's plagiarism. It just basically rips plots directly from the. Okay, sorry. Anyways, I also give it an 8, and I was thinking that long before you guys gave your 8s, and I didn't watch yours. I haven't watched your review yet, Mark. So I didn't know you guys were giving it an 8. I was also thinking 8. I think that's a good solid score for season 1, as I do think it, as we've been talking about all throughout, it started off a little slow, started off a little rough around the edges, and then was able to find its footing later on. So good solid 8 for me as well.
Yeah, no one Buckwald in the chat also gives an 8, so it seems like we're pretty much all agreed. I just also got to mention that Colonel Doomsday mentioned earlier that they shouldn't visit the Justice Planet either. I'd actually like to see that. I think Lower Decks can make that hilarious, making fun of like all the 80s people, scantily clad people running around.
When I first did my season 1 review of Next Generation, before I was worried about copyright, I just started playing Let's Get Physical, because that's what it reminded me of. They're all wearing Walkman headphones, like listening to Olivia Newton-John. It was like the most ridiculous. Like some of the original series ones were like ridiculously 60s. That was like so ridiculously 80s. That episode.
All right, so Mr. P gives it a 7, so the first one who's dissenting. Oh, well. Still a positive number. Anyway, I think I'm going to wrap things up here. So I want to thank everyone for joining. Thanks everyone in the chat. Colonel Doomsday, Norman Buckwald, Mr. Pete, and anyone who was here earlier, and anyone who's watching this in archives. Thanks so much for watching. And of course, a special thank you to Alyssa and Don for joining me for this conversation. And thank you guys so much. It was a great conversation. I know you guys aren't really up to much nowadays, but if you want to give a quick farewell and whatnot, I think Don, will start with you.
Yeah, listen, first off, thank you, Mark and Alyssa, for having me here. Always a pleasure to be with you two and to discuss sci-fi, especially Star Trek. Look, if you're looking for me, pay attention to D's reviews, especially when The Mandalorian comes out. We will be doing our weekly show, The Fandalorians, featuring myself, Darren Jakes, and Rob Stone from Smirking Gun Reviews. And at some point, sometime, somewhere, I will actually start doing these damn House of the Dragon videos. Get ready for the new Game of Thrones series whenever that shall arrive. But again, thank you again for having me on here, and can't wait to do this again for maybe The Expanse.
Hey, before I do my little goodbye, quick question. So what's the latest on the Game of Thrones? Are they still talking the Targaryen prequel? Is that where we're at now? Is that what's the next thing is, or what's the next Game of Thrones thing going to be?
So House of the Dragon is basically supposed to be the Targaryen Civil War, the Dance of the Dragons. So if they do plan on doing it right this time and not deciding we're just gonna rush through it, for one, it should have a lot more dragons. a lot less Starks, and it would probably be nearly 10 seasons, depending on how they decide to do it. Whether it's gonna be a lot of the reign of King Viserys, and then he dies somewhere in the middle, and then it's the Targaryen Civil War after that, or whether or not it's gonna be towards the end of King Viserys's reign, and then maybe season 2 and beyond is the Targaryen Civil War. So there's a lot of ins and outs with that. Got to see how they decide they're gonna set up the series.
Okay, thank you. So the whole long night thing that's definitely scrapped, right?
Yeah, that's gone.
Rappo, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
To me, that seemed more interesting than this, but they kind of destroyed the White Walkers in the final season anyway. So,
well, the thing about it is they didn't. Here is the thing. Unfortunately, because of the kind of, I guess, what people deem to be woke culture and Hollywood saying, "Hey, yeah, we have to be inclusive because you're gonna have uh, like 5 people who are yelling about why are there no black people in this show." They decided, okay, well, we'll make the Children of the Forest. We'll have them originally be black, and then they became the Children of the Forest that we know later on. Just like, oh, maybe not such a good idea, And someone at HBO realized that and was like, no, we're not gonna have people boycott the fucking network. No. Off the side there. Yeah, you said something about Targaryen Civil War, and they got a bunch of dragons, right? Okay, yeah, cool. No. No one's going to complain about the lack of no blacks, Hispanics, and Asians as long as there's dragons.
Right. Yeah, let's go the exact opposite direction. Let's just have all blonde hair, blue-eyed white people. Like, let's just, but there's dragons.
There's dragons. I mean, hey, who
but anyways,
about Lord of the Rings?
I didn't mean to sidetrack us. I was just curious because I hadn't heard anything about Game of Thrones sequels in a while, so I wasn't sure if that's still where we're headed. Yeah, so I've got nothing going on, as Mark said. I would like to get a channel going again probably next year, but until then, I will just pop up occasionally to say hi to Mark and do. Don mentioned the Expanse. I'd love to do an Expanse. I would also like to do a Discovery. At least a series overview, maybe not a halfway one like we used to do. And maybe Don can sit that one out because I know he loves Discovery too much. But yeah, so I will pop up on and say hi to Mark every once in a while, and that's where you'll see me.
Cool. So again, thanks everyone for watching. If you're just finding me for the first time, my channel's Enchantment of Eternity. I'm Mark. I do lots of videos on Star Trek. I will be covering Discovery weekly and doing some retro Star Trek reviews as well. I'm finished my season by season coverage of Next Generation, so I'm moving over to cover Breaking Bad. I'm going to start that next month, and also just finished my finishing up my BoJack Horseman coverage as well, and also finished up The Boys. Just finished up as well. But as these guys are alluding to, The Expanse is coming out soon, and I will, of course, cover the hell out of that when that comes out. So anyway, so just be sure to check that out, and thank you so much for tuning in for this, and we'll see you next time.